Hello and welcome to a guide on how to set up GKE with Kestra using Task Runners. Task Runners are a great way for being able to access remote compute environments on demand without having to incur big expensive server costs. Today I'm going to be walking you through how you can use the Kubernetes Task Runner in conjunction with Google Kubernetes Engine so you can tap into the full potential. Let's jump in and look at an example. Jumping into Kestra, I have a simple example here that's going to use a Kubernetes Task Runner. Now, we've already got this a little bit configured for Google Kubernetes Engine, but we are going to need to jump into Google Cloud and set up a cluster. Now, one of the key differences to using a locally run Kubernetes cluster is we're going to need an OAuth token to be able to authenticate with Google Cloud. And the best way to do that is by using a service account. So once we've got our service account, we can use this auth.oauth access token task here with the service account. This will generate us an output that will have that OAuth token, which we can then pass to our task runner, and that means we'll be able to successfully authenticate. On top of that, we're also going to need the certificate authority data, the server URL, as well as the username. Now, let's jump into Google Cloud and generate these. Jumping into Google Cloud, make sure that you create a new project, or make sure that you're inside of a project that you're happy to use. I'm using this Kestra Sandbox project for this example. Next, we want to go to the menu and we want to go to Kubernetes Engine. Once we're in here, we can click Overview. I'm now going to select Clusters and I'm going to click the Create button here at the top. Here, I'm going to select Autopilot, so Google manages my cluster, but you can choose whichever one works best for you. When I press Configure, it's going to ask me to select a name and a region. I'd recommend setting a name that's fairly easy to remember and a region that's near to you. As I'm based in the UK, I'm going to select Europe West 2. Here I've set up my name and my region, so now I can press next. Here what we're going to do is be able to leave everything else as a default value, so I can now just jump straight to create and wait for our cluster to be built. As we can see in the notification, our cluster is being generated, so once that's done, we can come back, get the information we need and get it set up inside of Kestra. While we wait for that to get installed, we do need to set up a few things on our local machine so that we can get the information using kubectl. In order to be able to use kubectl, we are going to need to make sure the Kubernetes API is enabled. So head over to the API library and search for Kubernetes. Here we're after the Kubernetes Engine API, and if I click on that, I can see that it is already enabled on my system, but make sure that you get this enabled. Once we've done that, we can now head to the terminal and set up gcloud. In case you haven't done it already, while we wait for the cluster to get built, make sure you use the gcloud command line tool to log in to your Google account and select the correct project. You can do this by doing gcloud auth login like so, and this will open a page in your browser where you can log into your Google account. Once you've done this, you'll see something that looks a little bit like this, and we can see the current project. And if that is incorrect, which is correct for me, you can use gcloud config set project and then the project ID. Don't be mistaken, the project ID can sometimes be different to your project name, so do double check that. Conveniently inside of the Google Cloud Docs, there is instructions on how you can install the kubectl component to the gcloud command line interface. And once you've done that, that means we'll be able to connect it together so we'll be able to get that information. I'd recommend getting this command and pasting this in your terminal, making sure that you already have gcloud authenticated with your Google account. If you haven't done that, make sure to do that first. So here I can run the command and I can see I've already got it pre-installed, so I'm all set to go. We can check that I have kubectl installed as well, and we can see here I have my version numbers come up as I would expect. Now it's important to note that kubectl does require the GKE gcloud auth plugin, so let's make sure that we have that installed, and if we don't, we can install that component as well. Here I can see that I've got it pre-installed, but if you didn't, you can easily install it by using the gcloud component install command. Perfect, our cluster is now up and running, so if we jump into our terminal, we should be able to get the credentials for our cluster. If I run this gcloud command, we'll be able to see here that our kubeconfig entry has now been generated. So now we can use kubectl to get the configuration that we need to put into our Kestra workflow. So using the command kubectl config view --minify and --flatten, this will give us all of the information we need for our cluster, including the certificate authority data, the server IP, and the name of our user. What I'm going to do is take the certificate authority data and add that as a secret. Because we are using the Enterprise Edition, we can head over to namespaces, secrets, and we can easily add this in from the UI. We can also add our master URL in, as well as the username. We are all set in this regard other than that OAuth token, and to get that we need to make a service account. So let's jump back into Google Cloud and create that. What we can do now is head over to IAM and we can click on service accounts. And in here we can press create and name a new one. I'm going to name mine something simple, but I'd recommend something easy to remember. Once we've done that, we then need to give it a Kubernetes role so that it's able to access our Kubernetes engine. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use the Kubernetes engine admin role, but you might find a role that suits your needs a little bit better. Once I do that, I can then leave this as is and press done. I can now click onto this, I can press keys and I can generate a new set of keys that we can then add as a secret inside of Kestra, which will then make it really easy to set up. Now that we're in Kestra, let's head back over to the namespaces page, go back to secrets, and here we're going to add our JSON like so. And then we're going to be able to just call this Google SA. Once I've done that and press save, we can head back to our flow and we are now ready to try using our task runner with our GKE cluster. Now that we've added our secret and we can quickly add our project ID in here, we have now got everything that we need to run this in production. We've got our project ID and our service account to get that OAuth token. We have our certificate authority data. We also have the master URL and the username. So now there's nothing better but to execute this and see this in action. As we can see here, our OAuth token was successful and we can actually press outputs and see that it does in fact generate an OAuth token, which we can now use in our next task. And as we can see here, it's already trying to create pods inside of our cluster to then run the task in question on it. If we head over to the Kubernetes engine, we can actually have a little look and see that our cluster has got a workload. We can actually see here it has generated one with the same name as our task in Kestra. And if we click on here, we can see that it's currently getting it all set up. As we can see now, the container main is waiting, which means we're getting one step closer to getting our task runner executed. And as we can see in Kestra, it has successfully executed the echo command as we would expect. We can actually see that it's deleted the pod. So if I go back to the Kubernetes engine, we can see that it has been deleted and doesn't exist anymore. Hopefully you found that useful and you're going to start using the Kubernetes Task Runner with the Google Cloud Kubernetes engine. Let us know in the comments below how you're going to use it and make sure to join our Slack community where you can discuss with us further.